All right, let's furiously agree that Albo is going to set us on a path to hyperinflation and higher interest rates with his wages policy. Chris, I've heard you talk about it tonight, but fair income. I love this. Keneally tried to pretend that he didn't say what he said, and then he turned around today and said, absolutely, I said what I said yesterday, which means inflation is going to skyrocket, and as will interest rates.
Look, he just doesn't get it. This was just him running off at the mouth. This was him not understanding economics, not understanding the responsibilities of government, and running off at the mouth because he knows that he's the wages guy. He's been talking up increased wages all campaign, so of course he had to say yes to this. Now, Jim Chalmers wouldn't have said yes to this if he was asked yesterday. Andrew Charlton, who's running in Parramatta, he wouldn't have said yes to this immediately if asked yesterday. They would have thought about it and come out with a much more considered opinion saying that the Fair Work Commission ought to be looking after the interests of low-paid workers, but they've got to be very wary of inflation and all those other factors. Now, the trouble is Albo's made so many errors that he just couldn't face up today and admit another huge bungle. So they've had to double down on this. And you've got the whole of the Labor Party now doubling down on this, which is, as you say, a hyperinflationary policy. It is not sound economic management, and they're going to try and shift the debate somewhere else tomorrow real quick because this is disastrous for their economic credibility.
So, Stephen, why didn't we hear from Jim Chalmers today?
Well, I have no idea where Jim was, whether he's on the plane, whether he was committed to a range of functions in his electorate, or most likely he's touring around the country, visiting marginal seats and campaigning. Look, I just got to say,
the numbers.
I absolutely welcome this. Let me be clear. If the message out of yesterday, today, tomorrow and every day between now and the next election, now and the election in 10 days' time is, Albo wants you to get a real pay rise. Scott Morrison wants you to get a real pay cut. Fantastic.
But what are the consequences of that?
Scott Morrison is just... What are the consequences? Well, let me be clear about this. I tragically have got an economics degree, and I have, been involved in these economic debates. And what I did notice just after the election in the last couple of weeks is every single private sector economist in the country say the reason that the Reserve Bank has had to put up interest rates as much as they have and are going to have to is because of the wild spending of the Morrison government. They're spending too much money. So let's be very clear. Interest rates going up because inflation's going up because the government have lost control of the budget.
Except
that's
the fact the RBA said exactly the opposite.
Stephen, there's no doubt.
Sorry, who? Federal Treasury?
There's no doubt that government...
Okay.
No. The Reserve Bank said exactly the opposite. Sorry, Chris, jump in.
Sorry, that's every private sector economist. The Reserve Bank has got egg all over its
economy to deal with the pandemic. But the problem is Labor has only promised to spend more.
Then. So it's okay for inflationary pressures to come from the government.
And they're only promising to spend more now, and now they're promising to spend more to put wages up and public service wages up. It's a recipe for disaster.
So is it okay to pump up inflation because the Liberal government are doing it? I just want to be clear that that's your position. It's okay when the Liberal government primes an economy that leads to higher inflation. But let's just go back to wages. And I watched Innes, who I've known for about 30-odd years. And, he's a great guy. But let me be clear. What a miserable bunch. What a miserable bunch the AIG are. They've opposed virtually every single wage rise for every single worker for the last 20 years I've been involved in politics. They never can find a time for there to be a pay rise. Never...
No, but they're not opposing a pay rise. Stephen, you know that.
No,
they're not opposing a pay rise, and neither are business groups. And
they just want you to have a miserable one.
He's a surprisingly good guy from
Let's be clear. I am talking about...
They are supporting a more modest pay rise.
That's his redeeming feature. That is his redeeming feature. I accept that. But let's be clear. You are now playing with words. I'm talking about real wage rises. Innes Willox wants a real pay cut. A real pay cut. Stop bullshitting to people who are watching here
underlying inflation is 3.7%.
by pretending that you can put up inflation. You can put up a wage by less than inflation, and you haven't given people a real pay cut. Because that's what you're advocating today, Chris. That's what Scott Morrison is advocating. That's what Innes Willis is advocating.
But would you not agree that there's an inflationary consequence to that?
That is the position of the Liberal Party and the AIG. What a shock. Okay, so now let's talk about how the real world works.
The thing is, economics is easy for Labor, isn't it? You just give everyone more money. Borrow more money, give everyone more money, and it's all rosy. That's just insane.
You've got $1 trillion of debt on the table. Don't give anyone a lecture when you've got $1 trillion of debt on the table.
You just want to make
and
it
half
worse.
of it, no, I'm calling BS again. Half of it came before the pandemic. You doubled
half of it came
the
after.
debt before the pandemic. Okay? Before the pandemic. Stop pretending that the pandemic caused all the debt. The Liberal government's out of control
you
spending.
caused a lot of the debt, Steve.
I can pull.
Remember, you spent $50 billion on the back of a bloody coaster. Come up with the NBN.
Fantastic. Oh, my God, you're desperate now. You're going back to Malcolm Turnbull's lines to try and win an argument.
Going
Good
back
luck
to
on
when
that
you
one.
were spending like a drunken soldier.
I can get you the editorial from the Institute of Public Affairs on Tony Abbott's 2014 budget. You know what it said? This is a big spending budget. That's what the IPA said about your love child, Tony Abbott's first budget. This government has just kept increasing budget spending across their entire 9 years.
Right.
You're making our argument. Yeah, You're making our argument, Stephen. Too much spending.
No, I'm just pointing out what a hypocrite you are.
And Albanese wants to add to it.
Thank you, lads. I got to go.
No,
I got to go.